Still to come, Kermode and Mayo in their screening room with Apocalypse and the End of the World. But first, James Ellroy. Ellroy is one of those writers who inhabits the seamier, dirtier side of American history, that place where politicians, the mob and corrupt cops collide. His new book, Blood's a Rover, is out now. Miranda Sawyer is a huge fan, so we sent her to meet James Ellroy.
Even if you haven't read his work, you'll know James Ellroy from the glamorous Hollywood treatments of his gritty LA crime novels, The Black Dahlia and LA Confidential.
His books are violent, moral, tersely written, densely plotted. I love them. I've read them all. I'm an Ellroy geek. When he brought out his 1994 autobiography, My Dark Places, I took myself on a personal pilgrimage of Ellroy's LA. Essentially, I went and stood outside the houses that he'd lived in, went to the places that his family had been, and I looked at the spot where his mother was murdered on the 22nd of June 1958 by a man who's never been caught. It was kind of like a Saoirse Le Bonnet Jane Austen tour, but with real, violent death.
Now, as the final part of his Underworld USA trilogy, Blood's a Rover, comes out, I met up with crime fiction's Demon Dog.
The trilogy is dark, and it's taken you quite a long time, I mean, years to write it. Do you feel like you've come out for air now, or do you feel like it messed you up at any point, or...?
The book is so hopeful compared to the books that preceded it. I didn't want to drop a turd in the reader's lap with the end of this third book.
So you wanted to make it a gift, I suppose, really more?
Yes, that's exactly right.
His last three novels form an imagined secret history of 1958 to 72 USA, which blurs the lines between fact and fiction to reveal Ellroy's version of the country's darkest hours. This is the story of the men behind the scheming politicians and paranoid FBI bosses, the enforcers, enablers and trigger pullers. According to Ellroy, if these men's lives had deviated off course even for a moment, American history would not exist as we know it.
The real trinity of Camelot was look good, kick ass, get laid. Jack Kennedy was the mythological frontman for a particularly juicy slice of our history. He called a slick line a shit and wore a world-class haircut. He was Bill Clinton minus invasive media scrutiny and a few rolls of flab. Jack got whacked at the optimum moment to assure his sainthood.
There's always, I mean, I have to say surveillance is incredibly important in these books, isn't there? There's always somebody who's kind of peeping or listening, you know. Is that because you yourself are interested in that as being somebody slightly outside the action looking, or is it just a kind of plot-driven device?
I understand the symbolism of it now more deeply than ever before, and you've read Blood's a Rover.
Yeah.
You have Don Crutchfield, a real-life surveillance expert, a real man, a friend of mine. I made him younger for the book. He has a lot of my backstory built into his story. He was a peeper and a panty sniffer. There's something heartbreaking in this lost, lonely boy who lost his mother following one woman for 3 years, 9 months, and 12 days. And if it doesn't break your heart, you don't have a heart. And so what I tried to do in this book is to open up the human dimensions of the first two books.
Because at the time when this novel is set was at a time when it was a bad time for you, wasn't it? Your father had died, you were spinning out of control, you were doing things like breaking into young women's apartments and homes and nicking their pants.
Yeah.
So there's a kind of element of that's in Crutch as well, isn't there?
Right, there is. This book is nakedly autobiographical. He's got the missing mother, he's a peeper. Yeah.
And do you still peep now?
No, I don't peep.
Oh, darn it all.
No.
You don't need to.
No, I don't need to peep. No, I gave it up. I gave it up a while back, yeah. I bugged and tapped and caught big events in ellipsis. I remained unknown. My surveillance links the then to the now in a never-before-revealed manner. This book derives from stolen public files and usurped private journals.
Now you've written this another massive work, and it is massive. I mean, your kind of sentences get shorter and your books get bigger.
yeah, but there's a more explicated style in this.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
It makes your readers work. I have to say, sometimes I read things and I think, hang on a minute, I'm not sure what happened, and have to reread it. Are you conscious of wanting your readers to work for you, or?
I want them to read the books in fewer rather than many increments to approximate the style of obsession that I wrote the books in.
Yeah.
I don't want to challenge the readers as much as I used to, but I want an obsessive, interactive relationship.
Because you're naturally an obsessive person yourself?
Yes.
You had a kind of form of breakdown between the Colt 6000 and Bloods River, as I understand it.
Yeah.
And how did that come about? Just overwork, or?
Years and years and years of overwork. And it happened on a book tour, and I went out. 5 European countries and 32 cities in the States consecutively. No sleep. You think I'm skinny now? Try dropping 20 pounds off me. Yeah.
So you were thin as a rake, no one looking after you?
No one looking after me, no. My marriage was going to the tank. You know, I was getting a lot of bad reviews on the Colt 6000, doing 20 interviews a day.
Because I understand that you went into a kind of form of, I don't know what you want to call it, rehab, sanatorium, something like that, so a rest place, shall we call it that?
Yeah.
And when you came out of that, how did you feel? Braver or more scared?
It's a great question. Both braver and more scared, and more afraid of myself, afraid of working too hard. I knew I wanted to write a different kind of book. You will read with some reluctance and capitulate in the end. The following pages will force you to succumb. I am going to tell you everything.
I wanted to ask you about your belief in God, because
Yes.
you do believe in God.
You know, I had a Christian Protestant upbringing, and it's always stayed with me. You know, as I get older, it becomes more pronounced. I can be a little bit preachy. I feel like the Reverend Ellroy walking to the pulpit.
You need some black gowns. That's
I want to get one, yeah.
For a casual reader of your books, they might be surprised that you believe in God, because I think you've been accused of quite a lot of things in the past: misogyny, racism, you know, immoral, in inverted commas.
The books are moral documents. These men have horribly attuned consciences. When they do bad things, they pay, and they pay heavy. And the expositing of morality in literature is largely the charting of the consequences of immoral actions. And these guys pay.
And quite a lot of the people end up dead.
They do.
What do you think happens when you die, then?
I think you ascend to a celestial plane that is indescribably groovy.
And what would you imagine to be on your celestial plane?
I'd like to see my mother, Black Dahlia, JFK, you know, whoever else.
All a big major confluence up there.
Yeah, big confluence, yeah.